Hi everyone. We are now going to review Chapter 10, Caribbean Islanders and South Americans. We're going to concentrate today on Caribbean Islanders. Okay, so just to start off, Latinos from the Caribbean islands in South America, they seem quite different from each other because their homelands will vary from the tropics to snow-capped mountains. Their ethnic backgrounds are Native American, Spanish, Portuguese, French, British, Danish, Dutch, African, Asian, Indian, Chinese, Italian, German, and Japanese. They have all these influences mixed together, but there is some similarities. There are some commonalities. The dishes with native ingredients and foods were introduced from Europe, Africa, and Asia. Okay, so there's that going on, and there is a preference for strong, spicy flavors. Okay, so here's the region we're talking about. Um, right now, it's just the Caribbean. All right, so let's take a look. Cuba is the largest of the island. There are more than 1,000 tropical islands that are going to stretch from Florida to Venezuela. They are uniformly scenic, okay, with tropical warmth and torrential rains that provide an ideal climate for lush plant cover and numerous indigenous fruits and vegetables. All of these islands share a history of domination by foreign powers and the subsequent political turmoil. And the mixture, the interrelationships, and indeed the intermarriage of Native Indians, Europeans, Africans, and Asians have produced an extremely diverse population. Okay, so the largest group of Hispanic population are in America are residents of Puerto Rico, followed by Cuba and the Dominican Republic. Okay, Puerto Rican citizens of Puerto Rico are actually U.S. citizens as well. So over half of the population of Puerto Rico live in the United States. And the number of Puerto Ricans living in New York is almost double that of living in the main capital city of San Juan. The majority of Cubans came to America after Fidel Castro overthrew Batista. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And we'll get into a little bit about the Dominican Republics here as well. Okay, so um, there were four immigrant groups from the Dominicans. The Trujillo era, they were political dissidents. Post Trujillo, they were just a trickle due to improved conditions. Then we had the Flotilla group, they were escaping oppressive poverty. And those who have left since, they are better educated, seeking employment opportunities here in the United States. Now, immigrants from the Caribbean vary in both economic and educational attainment. Okay, so the majority of Cubans came to the U.S. after Fidel Castro, like I said, overthrew Batista in 59. Most of the initial 150,000 were from the upper socioeconomic group. They were fleeing the constrictions of communism. We're going to address that again when we get to food intake and then once again with counseling, things like that. The airlifts from 1965 to 73 increased that number to 700,000. And the Mariel boat lift in 1980 brought another 100,000. Okay, so which is fine because there's no U.S. quota on immigrants from Cuba. Okay, let's talk a little bit about socioeconomic status. Okay, that's going to vary. 28% of all Puerto Ricans live in poverty, and higher than the general white and Hispanic population. It is a situation where free travel between the mainland, which is the United States, and the island may actually hamper socioeconomic improvement, right? If you're not steady in one place or the other, it's going to be difficult. And second generation Puerto Ricans living outside of New York City actually are doing better economically because they are attaining higher education. In New York City, the Puerto Ricans fill that gap that are left by the African Americans who are moving up. Now, the Cubans have a higher median income than the non-Hispanic whites. It should be noted that Cubans came to America as political refugees. Okay, so their immigration was not by choice. Okay, it was by necessity. Many were from, as I mentioned, a higher socioeconomic standing. And even though they lost everything, they brought with them these values of the importance of education and financial success. Dominicans have the same median earnings as other Hispanics, but less than the U.S. population. It's important to note here that the African heritage of some Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Jamaicans, and Haitians open them to the biases that are felt towards African Americans, which they have not themselves experienced in their own homelands. Good. Okay, so let's take a look at worldview. Ethnic identity is strong, okay, within the communities in the United States. Spanish is probably going to be spoken at home. Caribbeans are more likely to use English as their first language. In terms of religion, the majority of Caribbean islanders are Roman Catholic. However, the role of the Catholic Church is less important in the Caribbean than in other regions of Latin America and less significant to immigrants to this country. Although, among Caribbean islanders, the Dominicans have a higher rate of adherence to Catholicism. That's about 95%. There are other religions practiced on the islands: Protestantism, Judaism, Voodoo is a religion. It's a mixture of African tribal rituals and Catholicism, and there doesn't seem to be any sort of a problem with that. There in Cuba and Puerto Rico, the mixture is known as Santeria. It's and in the Jamaica, Rastafari is an Afro-Caribbean faith that is indigenous there. It promotes a natural, simple lifestyle typified by bare feet, loose clothing, dreadlocks, and sacramental use of marijuana. Um, Due to its opposition to traditional government and its push to return to Africa, it is also seen as a political movement. In terms of the family, the Puerto Rican family is based on something called um, compadrazgo. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, godparents are all considered immediate family, and they're responsible for the care of the children. Men, for the most part, are the head of the household. Women maintain the home. Men are aggressive. Women are traditionally reserved. Age is respected. Elders are honored. And duty to the family is extremely important. We do have a little difference with the Dominicans due to women working more outside of the home and children getting greater autonomy. Roles are changing a little bit there. Okay, so let's take this is Santeria. And now let's take a look at the worldview. Traditional health beliefs and practices. Many Caribbean islanders believe illness is a punishment from God and fate determines life and death. We will revisit that during counseling when that also comes into play. So prayer, candles to saints, laying on of the hands is important to not just maintain health, but to cure any kind of disease. Haitians recognize many blood irregularities, So we have something called the fables, which is anemia, which is cured by eating red meat. And then we have sezisman, which is a disruption of the blood flow due to trauma, and it's treated with relaxation and cold drinks. So once again, we have this sort of like hot cold, and we will be talking more about that in a little bit. Haitians regard two types of illnesses. So there's natural illness, which is due to just a poor diet, and supernatural illness, which is due to angry spirits or mal de ojo. Okay, we've talked about that. And Paco, Susto, Nervios. They're all known by different names within the different Caribbean countries, but they're all very important here. The Dominicans do have an informal system of going to older women, okay? So that could be the abuelas, they can be the madres and things like that. And these healers will consult with the Catholic saints. We do see big use of herbal teas, over-the-counter drugs to relieve symptoms. Good hygiene and sleep are important to overall health. Okay, so let's take a look at traditional food habits. Okay, Caribbean food habits are very similar. They're influenced by all these different cultures, right? The same cultures that came and influenced everything else about the island. Basic diets are the same. There are regional variations. You should know that tourism between the islands has, come up with popular dishes from one island that is now being exported to all the other islands in the hopes of pushing more tourism. Indigenous foods include fresh fruits and vegetables originally from Central South America. Once again, cassava, avocados, bananas, plantains, papayas, tropical fruits. Chili peppers are very popular. And with the abundance of fresh fruits and vegetables, cooking techniques are really underdeveloped, right? So they're falling back in terms of animal proteins. They will be cooking them, either grilling them or in a pit. Okay? So, not to upset anyone, but Christopher Columbus viewed the West Indies as paradise on earth. Okay, so let's take a look at these traditional foods. A lot of them were mentioned. Legumes are a staple food, most often in a dish called rice and peas. So red, black beans, black-eyed peas, all prepared with lard and salt, keep reappearing. The favored beverages are coffee with rum, and juices. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about rum coming up. Okay, in terms of rum being the most popular beverage, in terms of it's the most important beverage based on molasses, and it's unique to each island. Okay, so molasses was crucial to development of these islands in the 17th and 18th centuries and played a major role, unfortunately, in the slave trade. Coffee is still the most popular beverage. Regional variations: butter is preferred by French-dominated areas, lard by the Spanish-dominated areas. In Puerto Rico, we have food seasoned, fried in lard, with starchy foods consumed with each meal. Pork is the favored meat with some seafood, but not a lot. So we're talking about shrimp and lobster. And finger food is a specialty. In Cuba, black beans are prominent with starches, so beef and pork are also popular. And in urban areas, there's obviously an Asian influence. Dominican Republic, stews are a specialty with starches such as rice and beans. Jamaica, seafood, curried goat, coconut milk are used in the foods. In Haiti, banana stuffed chicken, curried meat, and cornmeal mush with rice, or even something called a black rice, which is made with mushroom broth. The actual mushrooms are not eaten.